Hello everybody, and today I wanted to extend on my last video where I made a montage of kills with the IJN Shimakaze. I don't blame anybody if they didn't watch it, because I'm not the best editor, I'm very well aware of that, but I thought it was kind of fun to do, and so I did it anyway. For those of you who enjoyed it, thank you. Anyways, this ship is not a top tier ship, but it is probably one of the most terrifying things to bring to a higher tier match, whether it's top tier or anything above its tier really, because battleship players do not like to steer. Whether it's an early dreadnought or a late tier battleship, most of them love to sail in a straight line, and the same goes for a lot of the heavy cruisers. We all do it, we've all taken torpedoes in this game. What sets the Shimakaze apart is its load of 15 long lance torpedoes. These are fairly quick torpedoes that will basically one-shot everything in game, and speaking for arcade, they have a fairly long reload on them, but it's not so long that you can't get a very large amount of torpedo waves off in a match. Anything within 10 kilometers, by the time they see your torpedo, you're already launching your next wave of torpedoes. They are 15-kilometer torpedoes, and a lot of times I have fairly decent confidence of launching them at 15 kilometers because, well, A, you have 15. You can spread them out to kind of hit a decent area with one-shot kill weapons, basically. And the other reason is, like I said, nobody likes to steer. So the other reasons I like to bring this ship into the higher tier matches is it's very fast. It can get to cap points and sit on them. The visibility mechanics in War Thunder are a bit wonky. I haven't entirely worked them out yet, but I do know for a fact that if you have a lower tier crew and say your teammates aren't looking at it, the Shimakaze, and of course you're not looking at it through binoculars, the Shimakaze does disappear off people's maps. They will not see it, it'll just continue to do its own thing. I'm not sure if that changes when it fires its guns, but there's not a lot of reason for you to shoot the guns, especially at higher tiers. You're not going to do a lot to battleships unless they're completely distracted. But it's a very quick ship, very maneuverable, very small. People ignore it because it's a destroyer. They're too focused on the cruisers and other battleships to deal with you. And one of the other terrors of high tiers is motor torpedo boats. They're small, they're tiny, they're way more invisible than the Shimakaze. They only carry 4 torpedoes, but they are extremely quick, and they also take down larger ships. But if you're playing in the Shimakaze, you have a very well set up platform to not only chase down the motor torpedo boats and kill them, because your guns, while not fast firing, they have a very low arc, and you have a very fast ship, which will help you get a lot closer to these motor torpedo boats. But because you can take a couple of hits and your guns one-shot them, their lasers, you can dodge their torpedoes really easily, it makes you all around great for hunting down those motor torpedo boats, and there's not a lot they can do back to you. You do have to be worried about enemy cruisers for the most part. Some enemy destroyers, if it's say an American destroyer or something with fast-firing guns, but especially cruisers and battleships with a lot of secondaries will just annihilate you. They'll pick you apart slowly over time. You'll probably take a couple hits to do it. I mean, I know I've taken several and the ship still keeps on kicking. A motor torpedo boat will sink as soon as you hit them with one for the most part, but your biggest worries in most matches are battleship secondaries, fast firing cruisers that get fairly close to you and start to focus you. And the one other problem I found with it is actually the Wargaming, or not Wargaming, not that company, War Thunder AI ships that they have filling out the matches. Because you're a 5.0 ship in a 7.0 match, at least for how I play it, the AI ships are kinda on par with you per their ship ability. And if you get close, they're just going to target you, and since you have a fairly weak ship, their shells are actually going to do some damage, and it is going to stack up. Your teammates might not be focusing these cruisers because they're focused on the actual enemy team, not the AI for the most part. And it could end up taking quite a bit of your crew or modules away just from random high explosive shell hits. But as long as you kind of keep your distance from them, have your smoke screens ready and use them effectively, you can kind of create a barrier just from not getting too close to them. Sometimes you do have to get close and you can take a couple hits, but it's not that big of a deal. Just know that short of landing a torpedo, and for the most part you're going to want to focus those on enemy battleships, there's not a lot your guns are going to do to these enemy cruisers, or for the most part basically anything else in these matches short of a torpedo boat, patrol boat, maybe another destroyer. But all in all, it's a very good ship. It is a squadron ship, I believe is what they're called. So if you're in a squadron, clan, whatever you want to call it, and just playing the game every so often, I don't know if it's every 5-7 days, somewhere in there, you'll get somewhere between 0 and 20,000 EXP that exclusively goes to whatever ship you've chosen for your squadron research. So it's basically a free premium. You can research it all the way up, spend, I think it's like 33,000 or 330,000 silver lions on it, and play it like a normal ship. I mean, this could have been a Golden Eagle ship, and you can use Golden Eagles to speed up the aforementioned research, but it's basically free. Even if you just wanted to hop over and play it and not have any of the other Japanese ships unlocked, you'll be playing it at its tier, but you'll still see early dreadnoughts, which are deathly slow and are definitely going to sink to your torpedoes, and a lot more other destroyers and smaller cruisers, which will absolutely die to your torpedoes. These torpedoes are just absolutely devastating to anything they hit. So it's a very free premium. You can research it while you do any other tech tree if you wanted to. You can even do ground battles and research this thing. If it's the only ship you decide you wanted and you don't play naval, you can research it with tanks or planes or anything else, as long as you're in a squadron that's actually participating in the game. So all in all, it's very, very useful. For the most part, your torpedoes are going to one-shot everything, whether it's a 7.0 top tier battleship or a 3.0 destroyer. It's absolutely devastating. These torpedoes have no remorse for anything, and you have 15 of them. I haven't seen very many things take a hit from these and survive. If something survives the initial hit, a lot of times it'll just flood out because they're making such a big hole that it's basically unrepairable. They're going to flood and roll over. And a lot of times, if they do even survive that, they're basically crippled. Half their ship's down in the water, their secondaries are underwater. It's just, they're not having a good time. So in that aspect, it is a very, very fun ship. It is great at just denying cap zones that don't have any cover, because you can almost endlessly spam torpedoes. Obviously you don't really know when they're going to hit, so it's kind of a surprise to you. You can kind of take a guess if you're smart and can estimate that, but you can't see your own torpedoes unless it's glass clear seas and you can see the trail in the water. They aren't marked like World of Warships is. So it's almost a surprise every time you hit one of them and you just get a random target death. So it's great for cap denial. You can actually take out a lot of the enemy team's heavy hitting ships really early on, and then if you are grinding a different part of the Japanese tech tree, you can spawn that ship in and continue on. Chances are, if you launched a couple spreads before you died, you'll probably get kills with the Shimakaze after you already lost your Shimakaze to battle and have spawned in another ship. If you look at the montage, there's a couple clips where I'm actually in my Fuso and kills from the Shimakaze pop up in the corner. It's the same idea. Those torpedoes take a decent amount of time to travel to their full 15-kilometer extent, and players will just continuously drive into them. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. You do have to worry about battleship secondaries and cruisers trying to chase you down and focus you, but really you're so maneuverable that, well, you're fast. That's what's helping you. And a lot of players will chase their aim marker around the screen. So worst case scenario, if somebody's focusing you down, just hold down a rudder key and turn. there's not a lot of players know how to deal with the circle maneuver. You're not using your guns anyway, so you don't have to worry about them tracking. Your torpedoes come to bear pretty readily, and like I said, 15 of them. Cruisers trying to chase you down, launch a bunch their way. If you are trying to snipe a battleship from across the map, select them as your target. You'll have a little aim indicator, put a couple torpedoes ahead of them, put a couple right on the indicator, and put a bunch right behind them. If you don't hit the battleship, you're going to hit something else because you're launching such a wide spread downrange. And even if you don't want to select a particular ship, I mean, you can select 2 or 3 and launch 5 or 6 torpedoes at each, but you can also just kind of flock shoot them. Pick the largest blob of the enemy team and dump all your torpedoes towards it. Chances are a lot of those players are still going to be there, or at least some of the players will have taken their spots because, you know, it's kind of that herd mentality. Group up and we'll look a lot more scary. Well, grouping up to a Shimakaze looks like food. I mean, one spread of torpedoes might net you multiple kills. It has for me before, and it is entertaining to say the least. The replay that I'm playing in the background, actually, I had a couple times where that happened, and there was actually 2 other Shimakazes in this match. There was one that I automatically got partnered with, which was very fun, and there was one that spawned in later on the enemy team, so I'm not sure if he got sunk by a Shimakaze torpedo and decided to bring out his own, but either way, this thing is just absolutely hilarious. It's not great for researching stuff above its tier, so if you're trying to research 7.0 battleships or 6 point whatevers, yeah, I mean, it might work for the cruisers that are around it, but it's not great for battleships. You're mostly doing this to either weaken the enemy team and deny them the cap zone so you can win, or sitting in the cap zone and not getting focused because you're a destroyer, or you're just doing it to have fun because it's funny as hell. Especially on these open maps like the one you're seeing in the background, where it's a big cap circle with no cover. Unless they turn, which most players don't, or slow down, which I don't think players do at all, they have no way to dodge your torpedoes. You're basically launching missiles at them that are going to be instant kills. The only map that I can say is better for the Shimakaze than these open water ones is, and I don't know the name because I don't remember War Thunder map names, there's a desert map where you spawn basically broadside to the enemy team at 10 kilometers. All the caps are basically way out in front of you. Nobody bothers going for them. It's just a slugfest right from the beginning. And they constantly put it at high tier as well, which pretty much sucks for anything that's not a battleship, and it kind of sucks for battleships too. But if you spawn a Shimakaze in that, and even if you only get off 1 spread of torpedoes before somebody realizes what you're doing and shuts you down, you're going to devastate the enemy front line. If you pick the battleship that's leading the pack and just repeat the same spread pattern that I already said before, where you just dump a bunch of torpedoes around the indicator, you're going to get that battleship and you're going to get everybody that was following him. Short of, you know, a wrecked ship stopping your torpedoes from a torpedo already killing it, or maybe the friendlies finally got a kill, you're just going to devastate the enemy battle line. It is absolutely nuts what these torpedoes can do when given a chance, and that's probably the most devastating map you could bring that to. I mean, this match that's playing in the background, I did 20k damage, and I don't think that's the highest I've done in this ship. I want to say on my laptop, which I was playing while I was away, and so I don't have the replay, I want to say I did more with the Shimakaze on the aforementioned map than I ever have before. It was just absolutely devastating. I sat there, I sailed in circles, and really nobody could kill me. So use it to deny areas, use it to cap points because it's so fast it can just sit there the whole match, or use it to soften up the enemy so that you can rush into the enemy team, lose your Shimakaze, and now that the enemy team has lost some of their heavy hitters, you can spawn your own maybe not quite decked out battleship and dominate the match with that because, well, now you're boss ship. So definitely a lot of purposes for it, and I'd say if you did want to get it, definitely use it to either research your Japanese tech tree or work your way up it. A lot of the Japanese tech tree is focused on torpedoes. They have decent cruisers and stuff, but for the most part I think they're pretty I'm not sure if it's how the game sets them up, but I feel like they're behind a lot of the times, whether it's, you know, facing off against a Des Moines when you're in a very small heavy cruiser or a light cruiser of the Japanese tech tree. Either way, balancing aside, the Japanese tech tree is all torpedoes. Whether you're sailing in their early destroyers and you're lobbing torpedoes across the map towards the enemy destroyer lines, which they're not going to turn either because they haven't learned yet, and your torpedoes are definitely going to teach them, or you're in their early light cruisers that are decked out with torpedoes, or their heavy cruisers that always carry a decent spread of torpedoes on the back, they're just devastating. They're basically going to one-shot everything at their tiers. If not, it's going to absolutely annihilate everything on the ship and cause them to die later on, which still nets you a decent amount. But their whole line is dedicated towards this, whether you want to try something different or you're just curious about annihilating enemy teams with stuff that's lobbed off your ship that they can't see coming. Yeah, the Japanese tech tree is just kind of based around that. So the Shimakaze, great setup for that. If you want to just research the whole tree using the Shimakaze and skip over a bunch of the early ships, it's definitely going to give you the experience that you need to line up your torpedo shots when you get into like the heavy cruisers or even the later light cruisers like the Suzuya. I'm sure I just butchered that name, but that's okay. Either way, very useful ship for training for the line. Like I said, the guns are pretty useless per fighting larger ships, but even though they have the slow rate of fire, they do have a low arc once you get within a decent distance of like motor torpedo boats and stuff. They can dodge as much as they want, but eventually they're going to try to straighten out and launch torpedoes or something along those lines, and that's when you're just going to land a shot on them. Or maybe they just stop paying attention for a minute. It's only going to take one hit from your 152s, and it feels like those things are lasers. So very good ship for getting rid of those little pests and saving your battleships the hassle of dodging torpedoes themselves, so that they can focus on everything that's trying to bum rush you because you just took out half the enemy team with 2 spreads of torpedoes, and of course another one's on the way. So overall, very useful ship. You can basically sit in cap circles and nobody's going to focus you until they finally realize what you're doing, or they get annoyed because you sunk one of their ships. You'll find a lot of battleship players like to, and it might be just automatic because you're one of the weaker ships out there per armor, you'll find a lot of battleship players tend to focus you as soon as you kill them once with the Shimakaze torpedoes. So you might find that they focus their automatic secondaries on you and they engage other targets, or you might just be dodging a constant trail of shells because they're focusing their manual secondaries and their main caliber guns on you. Chances are if you do take a hit from these, you're not going to survive very long because it is going to penetrate you. It's going to damage your transmission, your engine, something like that. It's going to cripple you. You're going to flood, you're going to be on fire, it's going to hurt, and then the next couple salvos will finish you off. Hopefully by that time you've done enough damage that, like I said, you can spawn in another ship that you're grinding and just go to town. Because, like I said, you softened up the enemy team, and now it's your turn to play. Either way, great ship for cap control, great ship for area denial, great ship for softening up the enemy team. Nobody steers, nobody focuses you, the guns are pretty much useless. It's a very fast ship, so you can run down anything you basically want to, and you can also disengage fairly quickly. Since it is a longer ship, it takes a long time to turn, but it's not egregious, it's not a battleship turning radius. So, as far as destroyers go, you more have a turning radius of a cruiser, but it's still very maneuverable, and it's definitely maneuverable enough to dodge most fire at high tiers, unless you get a little bit too close to somebody and they're really sick of you. As we get towards the end of this replay too, I wanted to point out that despite it looking like we were going to win, I still launched my next spread of torpedoes just in case the enemy team hopped on the cap. This game was pretty close for how much damage I had done so far, and my friendly team was doing plenty of damage, but they wouldn't really get into the cap circle. But I did launch that spread of torpedoes ahead of time so that just in case, if the enemy team stopped it like they just did, maybe I'll land a torpedo, it'll sink the enemy ships, and win the game for us. So, but it looks like that I didn't really have to do that. Our friendly team finally got on the ball, sank a ship, got on the cap, and won it for us. So overall, it's just nasty. You can't stop the torpedoes from denying an area once they get downrange. It's going to take them a while to get there, but they're, well, not as long as other torpedoes, but they're pretty devastating when they get there. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one out there.